15 seconds and counting. 15, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Go for main engine start. Main engine start. 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery, returning to the space station, paving the way for future missions beyond.
Hey everybody, hope everybody's doing good. Welcome to another conversation.
Welcome to
all right, I think we're having a technical issue here. Hold on one second.
I think we're having a technical issue here. Hold on one second.
All right. I think we're back. Let me know if things sound better on that, but I wanted to welcome everybody to another conversation sheltered in place. This is going to be a unique episode in that I don't have a guest. So I had a guest fall out. And so instead of canceling, we came up with an idea that to do a little experiment to try and have a discussion and see if we have any brave souls that want to join in our discussion. And so, as always, I hope this finds everybody healthy and safe and navigating all the challenges that are in front of us well. And, you know, I started this experiment called Conversation Sheltered in Place to not only hopefully help people navigate the COVID-19 crisis, because, you know, I have a lot of great guests with a lot of expertise in dealing with things like isolation and working in a hostile environment, and a lot of medical professionals. And we've had, you know, a lot of people who are on the leading edge of innovation, you know, vaccine development, PPE development, biostatisticians. You know, we've had a lot of people that could provide the facts, right? Because I think what we need in any crisis is facts. We need to know what the truth data is. We need to know our current state vector, to put it in space terms, so that we can make a course correction to get to the appropriate target. And so navigating the COVID-19 crisis was the motivation and the inspiration to start this. But from day one, the objective was not just to navigate it, but to come out the other side of this crisis stronger and more unified than ever. And in any crisis, there's two paths we can go down. We can go down the path of greater unity, and to put it from a U.S. perspective, I think a good example of that was 9/11. I think after 9/11, and certainly after a lot of natural disasters, the country comes together and rallies together, and we really operate as one organization called the U.S. To put it in U.S. terms. You know, the FEMA doesn't come in and say, you know, people don't start setting up camps and you know, accuse FEMA of overestimating the number of people affected by a hurricane, right? So we come together. So we have two paths we can go down in any crisis. We can go down the crisis of the path of greater unity, which we saw in a lot of the natural disasters in recent history, or we can go down a path of increased divisiveness. And unfortunately, it appears that we are going down the path of increased divisiveness. You know, there's folks that are aligning into camps. They're getting into groups, and they're setting up walls and barriers and boundaries between groups. You know, you have the group of people that are proponents of wearing masks out in public to protect themselves and to protect those around them. There's people that are in a group that think that is an infringement of their personal rights, and there's people who are believing the guidelines that are being put out by our experts. There's people that think that there's some type of political conspiracy going on to make things worse than they are, or to steer people in a certain direction. And so there's a lot of divisiveness that's coming from this. Put into the mix the fact that we've had a lot of racial tension and there's a lot of divisiveness that's being introduced into the whole equation from that crisis as well. And so these things are starting to stack. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the only way we're going to get through this is to get through it together, and not just get through it together as Americans, but to get through it as a planetary community. So I want to invite folks, if you're interested in joining this conversation. Tell you what, I think it's going to be too hard for me to do this one by one, so I'm going to throw a link out in the notes. And anybody that wants to join the conversation, all they have to do is click on that link, and then we'll try and get you into the broadcast as soon as possible. But what I want to do right now is I have an upcoming book, a book that should be out this fall, called Floating in Darkness, and I talk a lot in the book Floating in Darkness about coming together, about collaboration, about unity, about our underlying unity. And so I want to read an excerpt from Floating in Darkness that I think would be a good jump off point for a conversation. And so just to set the stage, I'm on the space station. I've been on the space station for a while, and I have to do a task. And so again, this is an excerpt from Floating in Darkness. Just like it's done every day for the last 4 months, the beeping alarm of my Omega Speedmaster watch wakes me from sleep. The first thing I do is open my laptop computer and check the schedule. Today I see a vertical red line that marches from left to right, passing over all of my daily tasks. As I finish my tasks, I will mark them completed on this program. On the ground, we'll be able to keep up with my progress. My job today, as it is every day, is to keep up with the red line. My first task is to reconfigure a toolbox that arrived a couple of weeks ago on an unmanned cargo spacecraft. Basically, I need to consolidate 2 toolboxes into one. Now, that might sound simple, but in zero-G with tools floating all over the place, it can be a nightmare. I scan through the procedure, and I note that it's long, complex, and highly choreographed. This procedure, like all procedures on the ISS, assumes a certain starting condition. Starting conditions assume that the equipment I'm to work on is in a certain configuration, that switches are set a certain way, cables are routed a certain way, etc. Many times, these starting conditions do not accurately reflect the actual situation and configuration on board the ISS. Today is no exception. The problem is that few of the tools are in the starting place assumed by the procedure writers. It doesn't take me long to realize that the highly detailed procedures cannot be executed as written because they assume the wrong starting conditions. To accomplish the task, I will have to request a change in the procedure. Now, I will have to be particularly diplomatic when I bring up this observation. In the past, when I pointed out discrepancies and offered an alternative approach to ensure that I could achieve the desired objectives, I at times met stiff resistance. So after I dress, brush my teeth, and get a bite to eat, I call the on-duty Capcom, whose job is to communicate directly with us from Earth. I reach him via our onboard phone so that we can have a private conversation. On the call, I notice that the Capcom is getting irritated, and I ask him why. Someone worked a long time to come up with these detailed procedures, and now you're just throwing them out the window, he says. In the calmest and the most diplomatic way I could muster, I tried to explain that although a great deal of work went into the procedures, that doesn't change the fact that because they assume the incorrect starting condition, they cannot possibly be accomplished. They cannot possibly be used to accomplish the task. I offer an alternative approach, and he tells me they will consider my request. About an hour later, I receive word over the main ISS radio frequency in a stern and somewhat disgusted tone. The Capcom transmits, "We discussed your toolbox issue, and we're going to allow you to do it your way." The response confuses me. The hostility is obvious, and I try to figure out where it's coming from. To me, it indicates that despite my best efforts, I didn't effectively communicate the reality of the situation. The ground controllers and the Capcom thought that one reality existed, But I knew that what I could see with my own eyes differed greatly from the ground's perceived reality. I couldn't understand why they refused to change their perspective in light of the new facts I presented. I remember a quote from Archbishop Desmond Tutu. "We cannot succeed by denying what exists. The acceptance of reality is the only place from which change can begin." In the toolbox situation, I believe that Capcom became combative because for whatever reason, he couldn't bring himself to believe that the reality spelled out in the procedure was inaccurate. The fact that someone worked hard to produce the procedure clouded his judgment and created a bias in his perception of reality. There are countless examples of this happening every day in everyday life. Every day people have heated emotional arguments simply because each has a different perspective. It has become so severe that when facts don't agree with our perceived reality, we change the facts rather than change our opinion. Alternative facts are simply tools used to keep an inaccurate perceived reality intact. As I finish reconfiguring and consolidating the toolbox, I realize that sometimes the common ground that is missing is a common starting condition. When we dolly zoom to the starting condition that the orbital perspective provides, people naturally are drawn together into a more aligned vantage point. In other words, if we zoom out to the point where we consider the implications of our decisions and opinions over the widest feasible geographic area and over the longest feasible time frame, things become clearer and we can make better decisions. That thought reminds me of the first movie in the Matrix trilogy. In one scene, Morpheus says to Neo, "The Matrix is a system, Neo. That system is hampering our progress. When you're inside, look around. What do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters, the very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system and are still hampering our progress. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged, and many of them are so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it. Are you listening to me, Neo, or were you looking at the woman in the red dress?" In actuality, Morpheus didn't really use the words hampering our progress. He said our enemy, which to me is the same thing. In the toolbox situation, the Capcom couldn't understand the problem because he was part of the problem. He was part of the false reality, and he couldn't rise above it. So I've got a couple of notes there. Let's see. I've got people asking to join. The link is in the comments. So just click on that, and anybody who wants to join, let me know. Send a note in the comments. And again, the topic of our conversation today is how do we overcome divisiveness? And so I wanted to share, that passage from Floating in Darkness, because it does spell or bring to light one of the reasons why there's so much divisiveness, and that's because of a difference of perspective, right? People come at issues and challenges from different starting conditions, from a different perceived reality of what the situation is, what the crisis is, and therefore that dictates what the path to the solution would be. So if you're interested in joining this conversation about divisiveness, please jump into the conversation. So I don't have to just keep rambling. So, like I said, we have an opportunity here with COVID-19. Since the pandemic started, I think for the first time in human history, are faced with an undeniable existential threat that literally is impacting every single person on the planet. There's not a single person on the planet that is not affected in one way or another by COVID-19. And I know that we've faced many existential threats in the past, and we still do, but none has been so undeniable as COVID-19. And so what that does is it affords us an opportunity. We're paying a horrible price. There's heartbreaking things happening to people all over the world. Just the saddest things that nobody should have to go through. Folks dying alone and There's a lot of mental health issues associated with it. So we're paying this horrible, horrible price. But stand by one. Okay, I'm getting a note that the link is not working. So I'll try and send that again. But we're paying this horrible price. So if we're already paying a price, we might as well get a benefit for the price that we're paying. And the benefit can be a more unified world, a stronger, more resilient humanity, civilization that can deal with all the other comments that are coming down. So let me copy this again. I'm going to send this out again, and oops, that should be in the stream. Okay, so I'm seeing the link to join in my stream. So send me a note in the comments here if you have tried to click that link and it didn't work. So so what I want to talk about is how can we overturn? Apparently it looks like we've gotten on the wrong path in this crisis. We've gone down the path of more divisiveness, not more unity. And so what are some of the things that we can do to do a course correction to basically get us off the path towards a higher level of divisiveness and put us on the path towards a higher level of unity? And I think one of the ways we can do that is to realize that we're all in this together. That old cliche, we're all in this together, is obviously no longer a cliche. It never was a cliche, but now it's obviously not a cliche because everybody is affected in one way or another. And I think one of the things that we can do is we can look to the International Space Station program as an example. Hold on one second. So I'm getting notes. Where did you send the link? The link is in the comments that I posted in the. Oh, it's it's on YouTube. Hold on one second. I think that it's only getting posted to YouTube for some reason. So let me try this again. All right, I don't know why, but the link is only getting posted to. I'm posting it to both, but it's only showing up in my comments. Is coming from YouTube. Oh, here's what I do. I just show that. So there it is. That's the link if you want to join. But what I was saying is looking at the International Space Station program back when the International Space Station partnership was just being formed. There was discussions about bringing the Russians into the partnership, and there were a lot of people that were saying we should not be doing anything with the Russians until they stop doing X, Y, and Z. And there was a lot of things that the Russians were doing that some people objected to, and they didn't see any value in doing anything with them productive until they stopped doing X, Y, and Z. But that's not what happened. We did bring the Russians into the International Space Station program, and what happened was a certain number of relationships developed. From those relationships, a platform of trust developed within the International Space Station program, and we can now use that platform as a jump-off point to start to address the things that we don't agree on. But what we tend to do is the exact opposite. We tend to take the things that we agree on and force them as a stick to force the things that we don't agree on, and that doesn't work. But what we did in the International Space Station program partnership was we looked for the low-hanging fruit, right? We found something that we agreed upon, which in this case was space exploration. We agreed to work on that together in the spirit of awe and wonder of space exploration. And I think, like I said, that's a foundation now that we could start to address the things that we don't agree on. Okay. I'm going to just send an email real quick to try and get. So I guess folks are still having a hard time getting in. And so I'm just going to send an email real quick, and then hopefully we can get that worked out. Okay. And I'll just send one more. Okay. Cool. Cool. All right. So, all right, we're gonna bring Evan into the mix. I'm gonna take down this thing. Evan, how's it going?
That's fine.
Okay.
Pleasure to talk to you.
And where are you coming in from?
Pensacola, Florida.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. How did you deal with environmental and
I'm sorry, you're cutting out. I can't really hear you.
Why am I on there twice? Me?
I'm sorry? Evan, can you repeat your question? Because I couldn't hear it.
Yeah. Okay. We have lag, but okay. How did you deal with issues where there were priorities, life-threatening? Oh. I think I'm on here twice.
Yeah, you know what? If you have a headset or something that you could put on, that would probably help solve that.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll bring you back as soon as you get that.
Okay.
So yeah, I think the International Space Station program is a good example to follow. So what is that? How do we follow that example? It is to look at the things that we agree on. It's to look at the low-hanging fruit. I think everybody wants COVID-19 to be over. I think everybody wants the economy to blossom and to thrive, and to bring the jobs back and to bring life. Bring the freedoms and the life that we had before, to bring that back to some extent where it's appropriate. I think the issue becomes in how we do that, right? And so, like Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, we can't, the place to solve a problem from starts with the acceptance of reality, right? And so we have a pandemic that is affecting the entire world. The only way we're going to get through that is by working together to solve that. And all the rhetoric that you hear that's circling around, I think is counterproductive to those goals. And I think it looks like Evan has his headphone on, so we'll try that again. Hey, Evan, how's it going?
Hi. Okay, I started part of my question. I wanted to know, how did you deal with issues where there was an event that occurred that was life-threatening, let's say, and you had to go through certain procedures, and those procedures didn't work, and you tried to talk to Capcom, and Capcom said, "Well, read the procedures," and
yeah.
And
So in an emergency situation, those procedures are not only, they're available for us to use at a moment's notice. We've practiced it over and over and over again. So the first thing is there wouldn't be any difference of opinion between the crew and the Capcom in an emergency procedure. All of those differences of opinions would have been worked out in training.
Okay.
But in the example I gave in reading the excerpt from Floating in Darkness, that was a one-off procedure. That was a procedure that we never trained for. Or at least that specific procedure never trained for. And in that particular case, the issue was that the starting condition was incorrect. It didn't actually accurately reflect the reality of the situation. And that's why it couldn't be done. But why I put that story in the book and why I chose to share that story on this episode is it shows how people can become entrenched in their opinion, right? And for whatever reason, the ground controllers and the Capcom could not bring themselves to accept that the reality that they thought was true was not true. Even faced with somebody who is an eyewitness, I can see the tools with my own eyes. So I think the parallel is, the world, people do not necessarily always believe the world experts in this pandemic. I mean, if the scientists and the epidemiologists and all of the medical professionals and the experts are saying one thing, we should probably listen to them, because that is the best data that we have right now. It might not be completely 100%, right, but it's the best we have at this point. And opinions and feelings and things like that are not going to get us anywhere. We need data. We need people who spend their life looking at data, evaluating data, and coming up with informed, educated opinions on what the steps should be. And so I think there's a good parallel there with that story, and certainly with space exploration. Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, you got anything else?
I'm thinking.
Well, yeah, we could go ahead.
Okay. I don't know whether this is slightly off topic, but I approached Tarver about that suggestion that I had made about the because what you're doing is very, very similar to what I'm doing. I'm trying to teach and promote science and engineering to disadvantaged students.
It's awesome.
You would be a perfect guest speaker.
Okay, I'm sorry. Was there a question in there? Or?
Well, you would be a perfect guest speaker.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, send me a note, and we'll talk about that.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk later.
All right. Thanks, Evan. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. So, again, this is a conversation. If you're just joining us, it's a conversation on overcoming divisiveness and trying to figure out how we can not only navigate the COVID-19 crisis, but come out the other side stronger and more unified than ever. And this is Open Mic Friday. We did have a guest fall out this week, and so we're trying an experiment and seeing how it goes. And so here's the link, and it's in the comments. You should be able to just click on it in the comments. But if you want to join the conversation, go ahead and click there. Love to have you. And I'll talk about while I'm going to give it just a little bit more time and see if anybody wants to jump in. But in the meantime, I'll talk about next week. Next week, I'm going to have my spacewalk partner, Mike Fossum, on the show. And Mike and I have done 4 spacewalks together. Actually, I've never been on a spacewalk ever without Mike Fossum. And so he's gonna be on the broadcast next week. And we're going to talk about a lot of things, but we're particularly going to talk about things like expeditionary behavior. What does it take to function as a team successfully in an isolated environment, in a hostile environment, I think that definitely applies to our situation here. And maybe just a really quick story about Mike. I'll tell you about the first time I ever went out into space on a spacewalk, and then the last time I went back into the space station, and both of them deal with Mike. My first time going out into space on a spacewalk, Mike, having been the old head, my mentor, he felt an obligation to give me some words of advice as my head was poking through the hatch out into the vacuum of space, and what he could muster was all he could muster was, Ronnie, don't look down. So that was his advice. But looking down was not an option, because down is the way out. And so I did look down, and below me was the Earth 240 miles below, and it was absolutely breathtaking. So fast forward 3 years later, we were on our 4th spacewalk together. We're all done. We're finished. We're 6 or 7 hours out into the vacuum of space. And I'm back inside the airlock now. I've brought all the tools in. All we have to do is Mike has to climb in, we close the hatch, and we mark this one complete. And we could repress the airlock, get out of our suits, and then finish our day. And and I was, frankly, I was tired. It was 6 or 7 hours outside. I was ready to get back inside. And he says, Ronnie, hey, why don't you come back out here for a minute? And I said, what's up, Mike? And he said, just come out, you'll see. And so I came back out through the hatch, and his gold visor was down, so I could see, or I'm sorry, his gold visor was up, so I could see his face, and he just had this big smile on his face. And over his shoulder, I saw this really, really thin blue line, kind of like that line there, but only thinner and darker. And I realized that we were just about to fly into orbital sunrise, and in all likelihood, neither one of us would ever do a spacewalk again. And so Mike decided we should just spend a little time here and enjoy our last orbital sunrise out on a spacewalk together. And we did just that. Both of us were hanging on the bottom of the space station, and we watched the sun. We watched our Earth rotate to bring the star in the center of our solar system out from behind the shadow of the Earth as we hung on the bottom of the space station. So it doesn't look like we have any brave takers to join the conversation. So I'm gonna wrap it up here unless somebody jumps in the next couple minutes. But I want my challenge to everybody that's listening or that watches this later is to be a unifying force. Is to look for ways to bring people together, acknowledging and understanding that how we're going to get through this crisis known as 2020, is to get through it together. And whether you're on social media and there's posts where people are just yelling at each other, or out in the streets, look just like the International Space Station program, look for that low-hanging fruit. Look for those things that we agree on, and use those things that we agree on as a jump-off point to maybe address the things that we don't agree on, and realize that no matter what perceived differences we have, what differences of opinion we have, everybody wants this COVID-19 crisis to be behind us. Everybody wants to get back to some semblance of normality. Everybody wants folks who are out of work to be back in work. Everybody wants those people that are suffering in hospitals and fighting for their lives to win those battles and to be returned to their families and to their lives. And so we truly are all in this together, and together we'll be able to get through it. So my challenge to everybody is be that unifying force, be those unifying nudges in the world, be part of the solution. And with that, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next week with Mike Fossum. So all the best, everybody.